On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's Mea Culpa Day. Yes, we are going back and looking at the stuff we got the most wrong about your 2023-24 Toronto Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, April the 22nd, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great place to come hang out, talk about the playoffs, talk about the draft, talk about all kinds of stuff related to and not related to your Toronto Raptors with sickos just like you who love the podcast in a perhaps a little bit unhealthy way. Come be part of our listener family over on the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join as always. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you support the show, however you support the show. And of course, you can join us on YouTube as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, and get a heads up via push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, so you never miss a second of that sweet, sweet Locked On Raptors action. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time, the best place to go buy tickets to your next event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, we are doing a thing that is very rare. We usually are right about everything on this podcast. We're never wrong, ever, but we're going to admit to some stuff we got wrong on today's show and go back and sort of examine where we erred the most in our prognostications about your 2023-24 Toronto Raptors. And here to do it is our pal from Sportsnet, from Raptors in 7, is Vivek Jacob. Big V, how the hell are you, buddy? Are you ready to eat some crow? Nice shirt.
I am locked on, locked in, ready to eat some crow. Get through all the bad.
I didn't even eat breakfast. I just left my belly empty for crow.
I'm ready to get into it, bud.
Before we get into some specifics about this season, of which there are many, we did not do so hot in predicting this season. That will all come to light even more when we take up our end of season over-unders contest in a little bit once we get some awards news down. Not that the Raptors will be all that affected by awards news, but we got to be completist in our waiting to evaluate ourselves on our over-unders. But we got a lot of stuff wrong this year, Big V. I do want to ask you before we get into specifics, though. Is this the most wrong you've ever been about a Toronto Raptors team? And if not, which team were you the most wrong about?
I think I would probably have to say the 2015-2016 Raptors.
Okay.
Because I think with the way the 2015 playoffs ended and kind of that angst between Kyle Lowry and Dwayne Casey, Kyle Lowry making the comments that, when asked about, hey, do you still have respect for him as a coach? And he responded with, I respect him as a man. I was like, oh, this is going to a very dark place. and I thought Dwayne Casey would be gone for sure. And then, they just made a few changes here and there. Like Lou Williams didn't come back. And who was it that came in? Luis Scola came in. And so I wasn't feeling too hot about that team. But then they ended up in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Interesting.
It was obviously a pretty labored effort to get there. I mean, getting through that Pacers first round series.
I don't know what you're talking about. That Heat series was beautiful basketball, the peak of the sport, I'd argue.
So yeah, I think if I were to think back, that would probably be the one.
That's a good pull. For me, I think it was 2017-18, where over the course of that season, I totally drank the Kool-Aid and was like, their net rating is unbelievable. The Cavs' net rating is terrible. The Cavs are old. They're broken. Look at them up against the Pacers in the first round, barely getting by the freaking Pacers. I was fully convinced the Raptors were just going to steamroll the Cavaliers in the second round. That was foolish. That was wrong. I was convinced that like LeBron was in fact not in their heads. That was, of course, proven to be wrong, as Dwayne Casey throughout the entire sweep in that series against the Cavs kept on referencing back to, if only we got him in game one. Yeah, tough stuff. I was fully in the tank for that 2017-18 team beating the Cavaliers, and I was hilariously wrong, as anyone who predicted the Raptors to beat the Cavs in those days was hilariously wrong. Let's get to other stuff we got hilariously wrong here, Big V. Let's start with the thing we both got wrong. I will let you tee this one up. Pascal Siakam, we both thought he was going to be around long term, huh? That didn't work out so well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it probably starts with Masai Ujiri's comments at the last trade deadline for me, where he said that, hey, big deals are for the off season. And so when you go the entire off season and nothing happens, I'm thinking, okay, this is who you've got. And then, you've brought up the point about, hey, you saw this big lesson. You should have had this big lesson about what uncertainty can do for a team. From the previous season, and you're thinking, okay, you know what, let's bring some certainty to the table. I'm thinking, okay, the trade hasn't happened in the offseason. You suggested that you didn't want to make a big deal in season, and so I thought there would be a way to work out an extension, even if it meant trading him down the line. It's not that I was under the assumption that Pascal would be here for the long haul. I just thought that was the best path forward. And Masai has taken that path before, whether you look at, re-signing DeMar DeRozan and trading him, re-signing Terrence Ross and trading him. And there's other examples. And so in terms of
in the heart,
in terms of just maximizing the potential value in a trade, I thought that was just the most logical route. And on top of all that, Pascal not being eligible for the Supermax, I thought that would have been the green light to absolutely re-sign him, because now you've avoided a potential albatross of a contract. And you knew that there were other teams that would have been willing to offer that 4 years, 192. So it's not like you were going to re-sign him and be in a situation where it's like, oh, no one wants this contract.
Yeah, to sort of piggyback on the idea of sort of using the Raptors' past behavior as reasons for why I thought he was going to get extended. I reference back to the sort of constant flirtation with Kyle Lowry divorces at various times, right? Where it always felt like they got to the end where it's like, oh, it's going to be over. They're going to trade him. They're going to flip him for Mike Conley. They're going to let him walk in the offseason. He's going to want to walk somewhere else. The market maybe wasn't quite there. So he comes back. And, it just felt like that always got resolved. They always came back to one another and realized, okay, it's best if we just ride this thing out together. And I just thought that was going to be repeated with Pascal, despite the constant telegraphing from the start of the season and from the opening season press conference that they maybe didn't want Pascal on the team. I just thought they were going to come to Jesus with it at some point. And I thought another sort of thing that they've done in the past, which is they don't accept less than value for their guys, right? Like they hold out for like the best return they can possibly get. And surveying the landscape for Pascal trades, I just thought there was no way they were going to accept an offer as piddly as the Pacers offer, frankly. And I was proven extremely wrong on that. They settled. They sort of stuck to their guns of not wanting him on the team long term. And I just grew more and more staunch over the course of the season, thinking, okay, like they're going to keep him. The Pascal Scottie thing, it's working. Like there's actual chemistry there. Scottie shoots threes now. The fit's a little bit more sensible. I thought after the OG trade, I mean, I'll continue to hammer the drum. Like IQ, RJ, Pascal, Scottie, that was a foursome you could have gone to work with. And I thought once that happened, they played some good games together. I was like, okay, it's all coalescing here to a Pascal extension. Never came. We were super duper wrong on that one. And, judging by what Pascal did last night, carrying an otherwise lifeless Pacers team, maybe they shouldn't have kept him around. Tears rolling down face, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't got to belabor it any longer. But we were both very, very wrong about Pascal Siakam and whether or not he would be kept around long term. We'll come back on the other side, Big V, get into more stuff we got super duper wrong, including my belief that the Toronto Raptors defense was going to be cream of the crop. Boy, oh boy, that was dumb. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. I've told you already, I love Monopoly. I'm a little Monopoly sicko. I love playing it with my friends and family, and I love destroying them on the field of battle that is Monopoly. And it's gotten to the point where they don't want to play with me anymore. They think it's annoying. They don't want to play Monopoly with such an excellent Monopoly player, but that's okay because Monopoly Go exists for me to go and play when they are too cowardly to want to square off with me in a game of Monopoly. I'm sure you heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you get to play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part, of course, messing with your pals. You can charge them rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can also heist their vaults for riches for yourself. That's a fun little wrinkle. And the leaderboards will show you who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon in all the land. But it's not just your competitive side that'll love it. You can team up with friends and family all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get into the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Today's show is also brought to you by our buds over at Game Time, the single best place to go and buy tickets for your sporting event of choice. Also concerts, movies, theaters, etc. Not movies, concerts, theater, comedy. That's what I'm looking for. I'm a fool. Maybe you can buy movie tickets on there as well. I don't know how hot the Dune 2 tickets were, but Game Time has tickets for everything you might want to go to, and they have it all there for you in a super easy to use app. It shows you exactly where you're going to be sitting. It gives you views from your seat. You get zone deals, so you can save even more when you just choose the section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. All sorts of wonderful things built in there. The lowest price guarantee, where you're going to get a credit of 110% the difference if you find tickets for less somewhere else. There's no reason not to use Game Time for your next event. Maybe you want to go see Shohei Ohtani and boo him this weekend as the Dodgers come to town in Toronto to play the Blue Jays. You can go get your tickets for those games this weekend over at Game Time. Go check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. It's a new code, by the way, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back at it here with Big V, Vivek Jacob, talking about the stuff we screwed up bad this year in prognosticating the Toronto Raptors. Look, we all make mistakes. We are usually batting like 950 over here, but sometimes the 5% seeps in. Don't quote me on that. I'm just anecdotally sort of drawing that conclusion. It's got to be right. I'm never wrong, so I must be right in accounting for how much I'm right. God, I'm insufferable. Big V. Let's get to the next thing we got super wrong. I will pitch one out there. I had real high hopes for this Toronto Raptors defense. I thought they were going to be at the start of the season with Dennis Schroder on the team, which feels like many eons ago. I thought this team was going to really struggle on offense, but balance it out with like a top 5 level defense. Jakob Poeltl turned that team last season into a top 6 defense after the trade, and that was with Fred VanVleet looking very ragged at the point of attack. You swap in Dennis Schroder, an extra year of growth from Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl more comfortable in the scheme, Pascal and OG on the wings. I thought for sure that this team's strength would lie in its defense. And between the start of the season and the OG Anunoby trade on December 30th, they were number 15 in the NBA. So not terrible, but certainly not the elite balancing out the bad offense level of defense I thought we were going to see. What went wrong here, man? It seemed like it was all there for the Raptors to be good at defense at the very least, and it all just completely came undone.
Yeah, I mean, I did not see this being an elite defensive team just because for me, while there was some roster continuity, I didn't think that, a new head coach, a first-time head coach was going to bring it out of them. I thought there was going to be some growing pains. That being said, you would think they would have been better than they were. And I think the weirdest part of this season was, after everything that happened last season, bringing in a new head coach, moving on from Fred, you thought the vibes would have genuinely felt different. And there still seemed a bit of that, I guess you would call it, some stickiness on court, some sort of, there just wasn't that natural flow. Obviously, there were like exciting moments from Scottie. There were exciting moments from Pascal. But for whatever reason, things didn't play out the way you kind of imagined after the changes. And so I think that translated to the defensive end. I think there was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of guys maybe not playing genuinely team defense where you are, it's like, hey, I'm gonna help here, and there's gonna be help from the helper as well, right? And so I think that was kind of lacking, and that I think is again where we come back to having that roster certainty, that rotation certainty, and just feeling secure.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like I think the cloud of unease that hung over this team for the first half of the year, which I keep on referencing as a thing that kind of sewered them from the start, it played into, OG Anunoby quit on defense. This is like known canon at this point. He was really bad on defense, which is weird for OG Anunoby for like a month and a half before the trade. And then all of a sudden he goes to the Knicks and he's like a defensive player of the year candidate all over again. Oh my God, my desk is falling apart. What happened there? Anyway, does live disaster happening on the podcast. Anyway, OG goes to the Knicks, becomes incredible again, becomes a destroyer of worlds. And it's like, that would have been nice if that was the thing he was doing for the Raptors down the stretch, when it seemed as though the trade was, it felt like it was in the works, right? It seemed like it was maybe a foregone conclusion by the time December rolled around that OG might be on the move. Dennis Schroder, I think, was overtasked as an offensive player. He was playing heavy minutes. He was running the offense a lot, and I think that bled into his defense. I was like, maybe the biggest disappointment of the season for me at one point was how badly he played as a point of attack defender, just getting absolutely demolished on screens, never getting over, constantly falling behind the play, leaving Jakob Poeltl on an island to defend like two guys at once way too often. It was really, really, really bad, especially considering the standard that Dennis Schroder had set for himself as a defensive player. And we saw it, after he moved to the bench, his defense perked back up because he wasn't being tasked with running 50 pick and rolls a game and sort of commandeering the offense. And it was just like it all really fell into just this noxious stew of bad defense. I think the point you made about the first year coach thing, really well put. I think there was very clearly more of a focus put on offense early in the season as they were trying to get their sort of ISO brains fixed after their last couple seasons with Nick Nurse, and the defense seemed to maybe not be the chief priority. And I think you saw that, right? I was kind of tracking all season long, right? What kind of shots are the Raptors forcing? What's their defensive shot profile look like? And you could never discern any sort of plan from that. I was like, oh, they're giving up a lot there and a lot there and a lot there and kind of middle of the road there. And it just wasn't any.
You get a bucket and you get a bucket and you get a bucket
from whatever part of the floor you want. Yeah, it was. It was not very. There wasn't much directive to the defense, I'd say. So yeah, super duper wrong on that, and it's a bummer because I like watching really good defensive teams play really good defense. Big V, what's another thing you got wrong?
Well, I thought we were gonna get an OG Anunoby breakout. I thought that. You
got duped again. Aha!
I thought that, bringing in a new head coach who was talking all these wonderful things about, ball movement and player movement was going to help him on the offensive end. I thought that Fred VanVleet leaving would open up some more offensive opportunities for him. When you look at the roster in terms of, the guys who are going to get big minutes, you would expect Gary Trent Jr. and OG Anunoby to be the ones taking the bulk of the threes. And so for him to only attempt 6 threes a game, I thought that was disappointing. I was expecting more in the 8+ range. I thought overall, you look at his scoring, he averaged 16.8 points per game the previous season, and he goes down to 15.1 this season. In terms of shots, he goes from 13.2 to 11.9. So he's taking fewer shots a game. That's definitely not something I anticipated. If you had told me that at the start of the season, I would have been absolutely shocked that he's taking less shots this season compared to last. And so all of that put together, you mentioned, the quiet quitting towards the end, and that probably played a factor too. And so, I was definitely wrong about that one.
Yeah, see, I'm not one of these suckers who got duped by the OG Anunoby breakout thing. I never kind of expected it to come. I always thought OG was just kind of OG, and I think that was fine, right? Like OG as is a fantastic freaking player, as Knicks fans are learning right now. I just never believed in the handle, the sort of individual creation. I just, didn't feel like it was there for him to have like a true offensive breakout. And frankly, I was worried that like a massive offensive breakout might come at the expense of his otherworldly defense, which, I think the Knicks have kind of properly slotted him into the role that he occupies. He is like an absolute game breaker defensively. Should have been on an all defense team, even with the stupid 65 game rule, which is a stupid rule. He's just one of the single most transformative defensive players alive. And that to me was always where OG's value was coming from. I never really thought there was going to be some sort of jump there. And look, I told you, right, 95% of the time, man. What can I say? I'm a beacon of basketball wisdom. But I'm sorry for you to have been duped by the promise of OG Anunoby becoming an offensive star. We'll come back on the other side. We'll come back on the other side, Big V, and round it out with a thing I got really wrong. I guess it's still up for debate regarding a massive offseason trade I was clamoring for. We'll get to some other stuff we got wrong coming up to close out the show in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our dear friends over at Prize Picks, the single best place to go and play daily fantasy sports, especially during the postseason for the NHL and, of course, the NBA. All you got to do is pick more or less on two or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. It's super fun. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks, and you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball and hockey's postseasons. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball and hockey in the postseason. Of course, there's other sports on there too. The WNBA season's booting up. You got baseball. All that's rolling over there on the Prize Picks app. You got to go check it out and download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDINNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 on Prize Picks. Again, download the app. Use the code LOCKEDINNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 with Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, wrapping it up here. Big V, Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet, from Raptors in 7, from Cricket Canada, from all over the damn place, doing the sports coverage. He is the king of getting stuff wrong, apparently, based on today's podcast. Don't worry, we're co-kings on this one. Lots of stuff got wrong this darn season. Before we get into the last couple things we got wrong, just a reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is your all-day streaming channel with the Locked On shows covering the biggest stories in the sports world from the local perspective, with all of the national shows woven in there as well. So you want to get recaps on the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, baseball, all that good stuff. It's over there on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 channel. Go subscribe. Big one as well with the NFL draft coming up this week as well. So you can go check that out there too. Okay, let's wrap it up here. Big V, I will give you the floor. What's another thing you got wrong this season?
Well, so I think this final point is not so much about this season specifically. It's more so a big picture view of the last few seasons.
Sure.
And I was wrong to, completely validate, the front office being as patient as they were.
Sure.
And, that comes from their track record. That comes from the success that they've had. And, with every move, I was kind of like, okay, let's wait and see. Mm-hmm. And now, if you combine the way the last offseason played out with everything that's gone on here, I think they've left quite a bit of meat on the bone in terms of, maybe setting themselves up better.
Sure.
Obviously, the OG Anunoby trade was absolutely a home run. And to get quickly, and RJ, especially with the way he's played since he's come over, that was a huge, plus. But I think outside of that, when you look at the moves over the last several years, now when you look back, there's quite a bit that, you say, hey, maybe we were wrong about that one. So I think, even watching Masai in the presser, for him to kind of get a bit defensive and be like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm still effing Masai. Like, I think that's a guy that for the first time in a long time is maybe starting to feel some heat.
Yeah, yeah. I think, there did feel like there was a little bit of culpability for the things that have gone wrong, but also some, expected defiance as you typically get from Masai Ujiri. It's and considering that question was in response, I believe, to like a Rogers based question. I loved it. It's fantastic. Deuce swears at Ed Rogers all day. I love it. But yeah, I think I'm with you, right? I was pretty, even going back to the 2022 off season, the one after the 48 win season. And I was just kind of like, stay the course, like they had a pretty surprising fun finish to the season. Let's see what they actually got here. There's no need to go crazy. I was very keen on Precious Achiuwa, continuing what he did in the back part of that 21-22 season. That was foolish, obviously. It just never quite clicked again for him the way it did in that stretch. And the internal development didn't come. The sort of top end development kind of stagnated or stalled out. And it just, they didn't have enough supplementary stuff to go and help the team get to where it needed to go. And it all led to the 41-41 and the Pirtle trade and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think it's totally fair to look back on the last couple of years now and say, hey, not so good in terms of a run here for the front office. One thing I really wanted the front office to do, Big V, in the summertime was trade for Damian Lillard. And I texted you this one as like a thing I was going to bring up today, and you gave me a little bit of grief, being like, "Sean, come on, you're right about everything. You were right about this one still." And I do think it's a.
And I mean, the way he played last night.
Yeah, man. Actually, no, I was dead right about that one. They should have traded for Damian Lillard. I think it's a fascinating one, though, because obviously my calls in the very early days of the summer where I was like, yeah, I'd trade Scottie for Dame. That was dumb. Okay, Scottie Barnes rules. I was too dismissive after his second season, and I'm very glad they did not trade Scottie Barnes for Damian Lillard. I will certainly cop to that one. Then as the offseason progressed and the trade offers were out there, it did not seem at all like Scottie Barnes was going to be on the table nor required to get Damian Lillard for the Raptors. And it seemed more like an OG Anunoby based trade. Maybe like a third team swoops in where he gets shipped to like Phoenix or something like that. That was all kicked around, whatever. I thought, in that case, trading OG for Damian Lillard, home run. You do that 10 times out of 10. You give a team with Lillard and Barnes and Siakam. But I actually think with Scottie's development this season, the 3-point shooting coming around, it would have even been a better fit than I thought it would have been to have those guys playing with Dame. But I do think, how things have ended up. I'm a big Emmanuel Quickley sicko. I'm sickly for Quickley, et cetera, et cetera. I think I'd rather have Quickley for the next 5 years than Damian Lillard. I don't know if that's crazy. Maybe that's like a lunatic take, but I don't think it is. I think the way things ended up, I'm fine with it. But I do think there's a case to be made that they still should have traded for Damian Lillard. I don't know. I have a hard time with this one. The thing I'm admitting I was wrong about was trading Scottie for Dame. The rest of it's up for debate. Tell me, was I wrong to want to trade OG for Damian Lillard now that we know what we know?
Well, I think the OG part of it is fascinating because, I think when you look at that potential of that, you're also asking, it's not just a question of, hey, would you rather have Quickley for the next 5 years or Dame for the next 5 years? It's the potential of, okay, does this mean you also now have Pascal? Right.
Yeah.
Sure. And so I think that's where I think it gets interesting. I think when you look at that core of Dame and Scottie and Pascal, Yak playing defensively with that, I think that's something that is pretty intriguing. And so you almost kind of get like, hey, would you rather, now it almost becomes like, hey, would you rather have that core four of, Scottie, Pascal, Dame, Yak, or, what you've got now in Scottie, IQ, RJ, Yak, right?
Sure. Sure.
And obviously that has a lot of room to debate. Ultimately, we know that the front office was ready to move on from Pascal. They were seemingly adamant about moving on from Pascal. So I think things are where they should be right now. And, hopefully now they can just, again, they've had some failures over the last couple of years. Hopefully this is now, part of the course correction, and beginning with this upcoming draft, where all of a sudden now Masai has gone from completely trashing it to saying, hey, we will find an all-star.
Yeah. Oh yeah, talking yourself into this draft, a cursed exercise. Go listen to Friday's podcast with Rich Stamen if you want to hear more about how this draft is not very thrilling. Yeah, I do think the more interesting would you rather there was, would you rather the core of Dame, Pascal, Scottie, and Yak, or RJ, IQ, Pascal, Scottie, Yak? Like, I think that's it's totally irrelevant. Neither of those teams are the teams they have, but I think that's a pretty fun would you rather. I'd probably rather the quickly Pascal, RJ, Scottie, Yak group in that situation, just because of youth and whatnot. But and also, again, because I'm a little quickly sicko. But yeah, I think I'll admit to being wrong when I said on Maine they should just trade Scottie Barnes for Damian Lillard. Okay, I was wrong. Okay, fine. All right. We'll leave it there. We're not going to do an episode about the stuff we got right, because that was just all the other stuff. We got it all. We don't look into the back catalog. We got everything else right. And so we're going to leave it there. Big V, got anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff. I did a bunch of preview stuff for Sportsnet that you could check out if you're still interested in preview content with the NBA playoffs already begun. I'll probably be doing some stuff the rest of the way, so you can look out for that on Sportsnet. We'll have some Cricket Canada stuff coming up as well, because the World Cup will be here in about a month and a week. So that's definitely heating up. And besides that, you can just follow it all on Twitter at Vivek Jacob.
Everyone go do that. Everyone find me at Woodley Sean on the Bad website. Find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And, of course, join us in the Discord. It's the place to be. Great place to come hang out, talk about the team, be there with like a pretty non-toxic group of people, unless people are trying to tell me about how rookies are good. And then I get real mad and angry. But you can come and hang out. It's lovely. It's a great little community we got building around the show. We'd love to have you be a part of it if you, too, are a little sicko who loves the podcast and listens to it every single day. Or if you listen to it once a week, that's also fine. You're welcome to join. That'll do it. We'll be back again tomorrow. TBD on tomorrow's podcast. Wednesday, Katie Heindel will be back along, and we will do the second part of our good, bad, and series with Katie, where we'll talk about the bad stuff. And with that, we will leave you there. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We will talk to you on Tuesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.